So in keeping with the theme of creating back to school content, since it is still September, I felt it appropriate to bestow upon you some nuggets of wisdom, if you could call it wisdom, that I wish I knew when I was in college. Also a huge PSA, if you're a senior in college or a second year in community college looking to transfer, then you're probably procrastinating on your applications. And yeah, like I know a couple of you who have already probably started, but I know for a fact a lot of you are waiting until like 2 weeks before the deadline to get started. So here's your painful reminder that you should start now. Alright, so before we get started, I want to give a fair warning that I am going to be doing my makeup and getting ready for work. I'm trying to be a productivity guru. I'm gonna kill 2 birds with 1 stone by filming this. Let's get started. So the first thing that I wish I knew whenever I was in college is that you're gonna be forced to take a lot of classes that you don't want to take, so you might as well try to enjoy them. I used to think that college was very different from high school in that you get to choose your own schedule, and while you do get to choose your own schedule, what they mean by that is that you get to choose from a list of required classes that you are supposed to take alongside the major classes that you have to take. Every single school, every single college has their own set of requirements that you have to fulfill in order for you to graduate, and so you're gonna have to take classes that you don't want to take. One way to make that experience much more enjoyable is to try to force yourself to just like the class. If you enter a class with the mentality that you are just terrible at this topic, or if you have the mentality that it's just really freaking boring, then good luck for you throughout the semester or quarter, whichever system that you're on. You're not gonna enjoy it, and you're probably not gonna do that well. This is actually something that I did know throughout college, and I was really grateful for. So this is something that I actually did in college, but I didn't know at the time that it was going to be effective in getting me a higher grade in those classes and increasing my level of enjoyability in these classes. What I mean is this: when I first started college, I kind of like made a promise to myself that I am going to enjoy every single one of my classes. The way that I did that was kind of just like by shifting my mentality. Instead of already walk into a class thinking like I'm not good at this. For example, I used to not be good at math, but before every single math class, even though I would get like anxiety before taking a math class, I would still be like, it's okay, this is like a really important topic to know. I'm pretty sure that there are people out there who love math and they're not like lunatics or whatever. So if they could love math, then I'm sure that I could enjoy it a little bit more than I already do. Lighting is important. And the really cool thing about changing your mindset about a bunch of these classes is that you'll most likely end up doing better. And it's funny that now, since I am working in education, I see this is a lot more true than people let on. If you believe that you are bad at something, i.e. if you believe that you're not good at a certain subject in school, then you already have the mentality of failure. So whenever you walk into that class, you probably have like a lot of anxiety. You already have these like preconceived notions that you're gonna fail. And so you end up avoiding that class, you end up procrastinating in that class, you end up not doing so well. But if you decide to be open-minded about subjects in college, you'll end up doing a lot better because you're allowing yourself the time to get to know a subject, to learn the subject, and just to get better at it. So you're just being a lot more open-minded. And so having a positive mentality about these classes, almost kind of like forcing yourself to like these classes, is way more beneficial and is going to work in your favor. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but if you've ever liked doing something or learning something, or if you just have ever liked something, then you're more inclined to get better at it. And when you get better at it, you therefore enjoy it more. So it becomes this just like positive spiral that's just really awesome. You would just much rather set yourself up for success and try to be open-minded about all the classes that you're gonna take. You're gonna have to take them anyway. You're already paying for these classes. You should definitely enjoy them, or at least try to. The second thing that I wish I had known in college is that making friends in college is way different than making friends in high school. Now, the main difference between the two activities is that in high schools tend to be more condensed and smaller in terms of population and campus size, whereas colleges tend to be more widespread in campus size and tend to have a larger population. So if you came from a high school that had like a couple hundred of people, colleges tend to have like tens of thousands of students attending. And so it's kind of impossible to go around and like meet everyone, right? Do you know anyone who has like tens of thousands of friends and maintains all of those relationships? That's like very unrealistic. Another difference in friendship building in high school versus college is that in high school, there are only a certain number of classes that you can take. And so it's very likely that you'll come across a couple of people who will share multiple classes with you throughout the day. So you have a lot of opportunities spread out throughout the day to bond over different subjects and like talk and like get to know each other and become friends. Whereas in college, it's very unlikely, especially in your first 2 years of undergraduate studies, to like make friends, because everyone kind of has like super varying schedules at different times, because some people might have like morning classes and some people might have like night classes, and they might have it on different days, like Monday, Wednesday schedules as opposed to like Tuesday, Thursday schedules. And so it's just kind of chaotic in terms of schedules to see the same people over and over again. And whenever you don't see the same people over and over again, that decreases the amount of chances that you have to kind of like strike up a conversation with them and sort of bond over like different experiences and stuff. So in that regard, it is much harder in college, I would think, to form friendships and relationships. So how do you make friends, you ask? You just really have to put yourself out there. And one of the ways that you can make that easier is to start by living in the dorms, or by doing some sort of like campus housing where like you have a bunch of the freshmen all together in one place. I did not dorm, and so therefore I was like kind of alone and isolated in my own little apartment world, and therefore it was a lot harder for me to make friends. But I definitely recommend you doing that, because a lot of my friends who did ended up dorming, they had a really positive experience. They met a lot of friends, and the friends that I did make, you know, in my classes who did end up dorming, they like shared their group of friends with me, kind of like not in like a weird way, but like I became friends by association. And so that is how I made friends. You could definitely fast track that by being in the dorms directly yourself. So that's one of the options. Try to think of finding friends and making friends as like dating, because if you don't put yourself out there and like face a couple of rejections, then you're never gonna know who out there is actually going to bond with you and be like a lifelong friend or partner or just some addition to your life. So you'll never know. You're gonna have to deal with some rejection. You're gonna have to deal with people who just might not vibe with you, but you never will find those little gems if you never try. So you could get more involved in your campus by joining clubs and attending like school events. You know, one of the pros of joining a club is that you guys already have one mutual interest, whatever that club is. And so that could be a conversation starter, and who knows, you guys might have more in common than you think. The third thing that I wish I had known in college is that the $100,000 that you pay for college is not necessarily for the quality of education, but more so for the networking opportunities and just opportunities in general. Now, if we're being realistic, there is a wealth of knowledge that is free on the internet, and you could find oodles and oodles and oodles of links whenever you type into Google whatever it is that you're trying to learn more about, and it'll give you a good idea of whatever it is that you're trying to learn. And so what does a college actually provide you with? Well, for one, colleges do provide you with that education in a neat package. What I mean by that is that it collects people who are good at collecting this information and organizing that information in a way that's much more easily digestible than, say, the internet would. Whenever you look up something online, it's not necessarily true that the internet will zero in on the exact question or curiosity that you might have, as opposed to like a college where you have access to people who are experts in their field and who are readily available to answer that specific question that you have. Colleges also formalize education by creating courses, and so there's like some chronological order for you to sort of learn every subject, and it's much more productive and organized, and it's just a easier way to learn things in college. Now, aside from education, colleges do offer something that no other institution or location can offer you, and that is networking. So by the nature of college, it is an educational institution. So it is kind of like this buzzing land area mass thing that attracts people who either want to better their education or who are like intellectuals who are curious about the world and they want to learn a lot more. So it collects people who are curious and puts them all in this like convenient little space for them to kind of talk and mingle and like interact with each other. And so colleges tend to be like breeding grounds for people who want to create or learn or inspire, things of that sort. And so if you are looking to network with like-minded people, the college conveniently attracts those like-minded people and places them onto one campus for them to interact. You might end up in a field where it's necessary for you to network a lot, and so you'll maybe end up going to like business conventions or like expos where they just have a bunch of people talking to each other and like exchanging business cards and doing business with each other. College kind of gets you ready for that and can kind of get your foot in the door before you even start a business or before people start businesses without you. And so this is a great way for you to network work. It's a great way for you to get insight into a field if you're curious about the field and have had no experience with it. So that's what college is supposed to be. All right, now the fourth thing that I wish I knew in college is that GPA doesn't matter as much as you might think. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't like pay attention in class and like you should just dick around and just fail everything, because that wouldn't be good either. But I think you would be surprised by how little GPA might matter in your field, or you might not even be surprised. Who knows? I was really surprised though that GPA doesn't matter as much. Even in like STEMmy type fields, it doesn't even matter that much because it's more about your experience. But yeah, the point I'm trying to say is that the GPA doesn't really matter as much as you might think, or as much as is traditionally led on. What is important then? It is still important that you do try your best to retain the information that it is that you are learning in your classes. Because for example, if you're going to be a computer scientist or like a software engineer or like some type of engineer who's going to end up working, then it is still pretty important that you hone your skills and you understand like the basics that are presented to you in say like calculus class and like physics and like those types of classes. But I've noticed that especially with a lot of my friends who are working in tech right now is that their majors don't necessarily matter that much. It's more so your experience. And so my one piece of advice for this little segment is to get internships or to get some kind of work experience. This is beneficial for so many different reasons, not just because it like pads your resume and it makes you look really good to like future employers, but it has many benefits to it. The first benefit to getting an internship or getting like work experience in a field is that you kind of get to experience the trial period of having that job as like a full-on profession, and you can kind of test it out for like 3 months as opposed to like studying it for 4 years. What do I mean by this? For example, if you want to be a doctor and you have never been a doctor in your entire life and you end up like wasting 10 years going to school for it and then end up fucking hating your job, that there's like a lot on the line if you end up changing paths then, as opposed to if you're like doing your undergraduate studies and you do an internship for like a doctor and like you're like, I'm not too well versed in like the medical world, so I don't know how you would get to work with a doctor, but let's say you're like an assistant or like an intern who doesn't get paid that much or get paid at all, and you kind of have like a 3-month insight to what this doctor does every day on a daily basis, then you can kind of, you know, evaluate whether or not you would like to be a doctor. And it's relatively risk-free because you're so young, you know, you have all of this time to like experiment and test out different fields. So doing that is relatively risk-free as opposed to dedicating your entire undergraduate and then graduate studies to like one path and then finding out that you fucking hate it. So that's one of the benefits. Another one of the benefits is that you get hands-on work experience, which will kind of put you past all of the other candidates in your field whenever you guys are like applying for like the same jobs and stuff. I had a friend who was a math major like me, and unlike me, however, he did not choose to go down the unemployment route, and he got a bunch of internships and he did a bunch of work in AI in his undergraduate years, and now he works as something, but he works for Google. All right, so he landed a job, whereas I am figuring it out. I'm just joking. I work in education. But he had like a much clearer path because of his experience. And so your grades don't really matter that much. Your major also doesn't really matter that much. It's really all of your experience and how much you're willing to put into learning new things. So really take advantage of this time when you don't necessarily have bills to pay to kind of like figure out what it is that you want to do. I will make a quick disclaimer though that GPA can matter depending on the trajectory that you anticipate to take. And so if you plan on getting a master's or a PhD, then your GPA does matter because the likelihood of your acceptance into one of these programs is pretty dependent upon your GPA. There are a lot of other factors that go into deciding whether or not you are admitted into a program, but GPA is pretty high up there in like one of the most important things. And so if you are planning on applying to a master's program or a PhD program, then your GPA does matter, but none of those are jobs. The fifth thing that I wish I knew in college is that I should enjoy my time in college. And I say this now because I remember thinking that at the beginning of every fall semester or at the beginning of every new school year, I would just be counting down the days and counting down the years until I am out of school. And I remember thinking distinctly like, oh, when I graduate, I'll be happy. When I graduate, I'll have so much free time. When I graduate, I'll be able to have a healthy balance between work and my life. And when I graduate, I'll do this. When I graduate, I'll start side hustles and just be amazing, and like life will be great and this is great. And so if I could just hang on to these couple of years, then I will reach happiness. I realized that I was so wrong in a couple of things. I realized there was like a huge flaw in my mentality throughout my undergraduate years. And the main thing was that I willingly chose to postpone my happiness. I was just anticipating happiness in the future. My main thing in college was like, oh, I'm going to be happy later on, so right now I could suffer, or right now it's okay for me to not be happy. Now that I'm looking back at it, I didn't have to postpone happiness. I could have just chosen to be happy in the moment. I could have just made the best out of my situation. I did not necessarily need to graduate or achieve a certain goal in order to give myself permission to be happy. Like I could just be happy. And the funny thing is that now that I have graduated, I feel as though like nothing has really changed other than the fact that I don't like formally take classes and like don't have to listen to a professor telling me what to do, and like, yeah, nothing has really changed. And so this whole time while I was in college thinking like, oh, I will eventually achieve happiness, I will eventually be happy in the future, that's all kind of bullshit. And I could have just chosen to be happy. I was kind of just looking forward to this like goalpost and reaching it. I was looking forward to it so much that I got lost in the present and kind of just wasn't living to my fullest extent. Reflecting back, college was some of the best times that I've ever had. There is never going to be another time in my life where I don't have to really worry about finances. There's never going to be another time in my life where I'm going to be as carefree, surrounded by this many like-minded individuals. Looking back, college was a fucking blast, but while I was in college, having a fucking blast, I was just thinking like my future is just gonna be so much better, so I should just be like annoying and like unhappy right now. Essentially what I'm trying to say is that happiness ultimately is a choice. And I know a lot of people are gonna come after me saying like, well, what about people who experience trauma? What about people who have had terrible lives, who are in poverty, who are starving? And I know that their situations are terrible, but even in terrible situations, you can choose to look on the brighter side. And whether or not you choose to understand happiness as a choice or something that's completely out of your control does not change my reality. Something that I would emphasize to every person who is going into college, like, you don't have to get that job in order to be happy. You don't have to get this grade in order to be happy. You don't have to wait for this internship to happen to be happy. You can just be happy with yourself and be proud that you've made it this far. All right, so I just changed and did my hair. I'm actually gonna run off to work now. And so those are the things that I wish I knew in college. I think they really would have added to a much more fulfilling college experience. And so if you are a senior or someone who is applying to go to college, I wish the best for you. College is gonna be really fun. I know people are like bashing college right now. And yes, it's very expensive and it's like super privileged to be able to attend a college. But if you can, it's a really great experience in my opinion. And college is what you make of it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. Like, comment, and subscribe if you did find it useful, and if you want to see more videos. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.